Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I drew this cute little bunny. He's peeking out of a tulip, and I am drawing this with colored pencils on Legion Stonehenge paper. You can see me here getting started just by creating an outline. I was using Prismacolor and Polychromos pencils. And now I'm starting to work on some of these directional lines or veins that are in the flower. These are really important for establishing shape to this tulip. I want it to look like it's kind of curved in. And I'm using a Polychromos pink carmine for these veins. You can also see me switching back and forth between that pencil and the Prismacolor Deco Pink. And you can draw this tulip any color you want. I chose these bright warm pinks, but you could cool this down. As long as you have a range of darker valued colors and mid-tone colors and highlight colors, you're going to be fine here. And you're going to see me working back and forth over these darker veiny lines quite a bit. I even mixed in some process red from Prismacolor and a fuchsia pencil from Polychromos. I've got light purple pink in there. And here you see me using my white Prismacolor pencil to block in where I want my highlights to go. That's really important because I did want some nice bright highlights here. And then working with the Deco Pink and the Pink Rose. Pink Rose is a much more muted pink, and I use that in place of maybe a gray. Going over everything with that Deco Pink now. Even tinting the highlighted areas with that. Using an embossing tool around the edges of the bunny so that some of those tiny little hairs will show up as I'm working on the background. This is sort of the inside of the tulip. And in that area, I brought in some crimson red and crimson lake from Prismacolor and some pink carmine as well. Wanted to make sure I had some dark values back there so that it did look like that's the background. I wanted that area to fade into the back. If this is moving way too fast for you, keep in mind that I do have a full tutorial, two-part tutorial over on Patreon, which is in mostly real time, so I'll talk to you about what I'm doing and why I'm making these decisions. But in the meantime here, you can see me blending this all out with paint thinner. I'm using Utrecht Nude Odorless Paint Thinner. And my goal here is to dissolve the pencil pigment, so you'll see how nice and smooth this gets. It's also really going to brighten those colors up quite a bit, and in this case even more than I wanted it to. So you'll see me in my next layers trying to adjust my colors somewhat, but it gives me a really nice base to work from. This is a part of the process of nearly every drawing that I do. It's getting that all blended out, and then I can come over and adjust my values. Here you can see me coming in with that Prismacolor Crimson Lake to really darken up some of the shadow areas, and just creating that base around the bottom of the tulip and establishing that base using the darker color. I think that made a big difference already. And that's just the process for my second layers, is I'm just going through and adjusting values, changing some of the colors a little bit if needed, and adding details, and then just adding that bit of finesse at the end where I just look back and forth between my drawing and my reference image and just see if there's anything else that I want to add. Really darkening up some of those colors. Brought in some pomegranate from Prismacolor, which is a slightly cooler color, just to tone down the pinks a little bit. Got a little bit too bubblegum pink for my taste. And I'm using a lot of that pink rose, especially around these edge petals that are in a light shadow. They don't really need to be in focus. I guess they're not so much in shadow as they are just out of focus. Here I'm using a scrubber brush all over just to smooth things out even further. There's not any solvent on that brush. That's not something you'll see me do very often, but occasionally I just feel like I need to ground down that pencil pigment a little more, but I don't really want to move the pencil around too much, so can come in with that dry brush. And here I'm using a touch of solvent. Again, my goal is usually to either blend or to make things look smooth. And now moving on to the bunny. I always like to start by blocking in the eyes. I think it's important to get those right. I would hate to spend a lot of time working on this and then come back through and draw the eyes wrong and need to start over. So you're going to see me get the eyes and the nose and the mouth in here. And then I'm going to start working on the shadow areas of the fur. And I was using mostly Polychromos pencils here, burnt umber, walnut brown, bistre, a little bit of raw umber, and then I was using some of the Prismacolor Seashell Pink and French Gray 10%. French Gray 10% is more of a brownish gray, and I really like the range of grays that are in the Prismacolor brand range. They have a full range of cool grays, warm grays, and French grays, which is nice. But especially for drawing fur like this, the Polychromos pencils do work really well because they are oil-based and they hold this really nice point, and you can press pretty hard with them without them breaking. And I really just moved through this rabbit, just going pencil by pencil. And with each pass, he just starts to look more complete and more realistic. I've seen a lot of other artists draw animal fur by first just coloring in a nice layer base of a color they want and then coming over with the finer details for the hair. That is not typically how I work. I do tend to just start from the beginning, drawing these little hair-like marks. And I don't necessarily think that's right or wrong. I would experiment and see what works best for your techniques. I think if I drew a lot of animals, I would maybe start to work that way more frequently, but this is just what works for my brain. And it doesn't take too long to start filling all of this in. I was working on a smaller scale here because I was creating this for a beginner tutorial for my Patreon. So I wanted to make sure I could get it done in a reasonable amount of time. Blending over this again with the solvent. always let that solvent dry for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I will come back through and add the rest of my layers. So I was working on this background a little bit more while the rabbit himself dries. And going back over, you're going to see me follow a very similar process that I did before I blended everything out, and just working pencil by pencil again, adjusting any of the details that I need, brightening things up where I need to brighten them up, and just refining some of the fine little hairs. These second layers are usually a lot easier because I already have everything else blocked in. So I'm still looking over at my reference image quite a bit, but not as much as I do in the initial layers. So I sort of already know where everything goes. The very last thing you're going to see me do here is draw in the whiskers, and that really adds a lot to his face. Something that makes such a big difference, but you really do have to wait until the end because it's hard to work around those, or I should say I have to wait until the end. And here they are. I did have a lot of fun drawing this one. Hopefully I can draw some more animals in the future. Adding a shadow around the base here just to, again, create more of a 3D look. If you have any questions about this drawing or my process, leave them in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. If you want to watch the Patreon videos, head over there and check those out. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video here on YouTube. Bye, everybody.